Welcome to this series on gluten-free cooking and baking. What inspired me to start this series was not only my concern for those who struggle with gluten intolerance, but also mental health problems. I struggled with mental health problems for many years and I was determined to understand what was causing it. So I started doing research and discovered that one of the causes of mental health problems can be inflammation in the brain, known as neuroinflammation. There are many causes of neuroinflammation. More information can be found on my website, which will be linked in the description box. In this video, I only want to focus on one of the causes of neuroinflammation, and that is gluten intolerance. The article, "Is Gluten Killing Your Brain?" by Chris Kresser from Kresser Institute states, symptoms of non-celiac gluten sensitivity may be limited to gastrointestinal distress, including diarrhea, constipation, and bloating. However, a growing body of research indicates that in certain susceptible individuals, non-celiac gluten sensitivity can have a significant impact on the brain. This is cause for concern, given the estimated number of people who may have undiagnosed non-celiac gluten sensitivity and the dramatically rising numbers of people experiencing mental health disorders and neurodegenerative disease. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity appears to affect the brain by altering activity along the gut-brain axis, which is the bidirectional communication system between the enteric nervous system in the gut and the central nervous system in the brain and spinal cord. The gut-brain axis links gut function with emotional and cognitive centers in the brain. Inputs that affect gut health, such as diet and the composition of the microbiome, ultimately affect brain function. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity incites inflammation in the gut, and through the gut-brain axis can cause inflammation and dysfunction in the brain. Neuroinflammation has been associated with depression and anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, ADHD, and an increased vulnerability to neurodegenerative diseases. Therefore, non-celiac gluten sensitivity may be an underlying cause of neuroinflammation, gradually altering the normal healthy functioning of the brain and leading to manifestations of mental health problems and neurological disease. When I found this article, I already knew that I was gluten intolerant, but I wasn't aware of the impact that it could have on the brain. After this discovery, I decided to go on a strict gluten-free diet, and within a few months, my symptoms and episodes were gone, except for the psychological aspects that needed to be resolved. The strategies I used for these issues are also on my website. If you struggle with gluten intolerance, this series is designed to help you get started with a gluten-free, plant-based diet. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to bake a gluten-free bread. This is my own recipe and I spent a lot of time trying to get the taste and texture to resemble wheat bread. This recipe can be used to make bread loaves, burger buns, hot dog rolls, and pizza bases. The breadcrumbs can also be used to bind patties, or they can be dried to make crumbed foods. The combination of 3 whole grains in this bread helps to keep blood sugar levels stable for longer, which is important for stable moods. It contains no refined flours or refined starches and is made of whole foods. Just a note before we get started, flax seeds contain phytoestrogens, so if you're on hormone medication and you have any concerns, speak to your doctor before consuming flax seeds on a daily basis. Flax seeds may also have natural blood thinning properties, so be cautious if you are on blood thinners. Now we can begin our demonstration. For this recipe you will need 1 cup ground golden flax seeds or linseeds, 2 tablespoons ground chia seeds, a half a cup plus a quarter cup plus an eighth cup hot water, a half a cup plus a quarter cup plus an eighth cup whole white sorghum soaked overnight, rinsed and drained, half a cup plus a quarter cup plus an eighth cup whole hulled millet soaked overnight, rinsed and drained. A half a cup plus a quarter cup warm to hot water. Be careful of the pressure in the blender if you're using a closed blender. 1 tablespoon raw honey or date syrup, 1 teaspoon plus a quarter teaspoon Himalayan salt, half a teaspoon bicarbonate of soda, 2 teaspoons instant yeast, 1 cup plus a quarter cup gluten-free oat flour, 3 tablespoons extra virgin olive oil. To make your ground golden flax seeds, take your whole golden flax seeds and grind them in the coffee grinder. The same with the chia seeds. So now we're going to measure the flax seeds or linseeds. So I'm going to demonstrate how I measure the flours, because if you compact the flours, you're going to have more flour than me, and the ratio between water and flour is going to be different, and you might end up with a dry bread because your flour consistency is more than the water. Mix the flax flour and the chia flour to prevent lumps. Half a cup. Plus a quarter cup. Plus an 1/8 cup hot water. Cover it with a plate or a lid to keep the moisture in, and set it aside. Make sure that the soaked grains are drained well, so that you don't end up with more liquid in the recipe that you need. For this, I do compact the grain into the cup. With the flours, I don't. Half a cup white sorghum. Quarter cup. And an 1/8 cup. the same with the millet. Half a cup. Plus a quarter cup. Plus an 1/8 cup. Okay, so if you're using a closed blender, you might want to use warm water and not hot water to prevent the pressure from building up too much in the blender. Half a cup. Plus a quarter cup. And then we're going to blend this. I'm just letting some of the steam out to prevent the pressure from building up. A little bit longer. Pour the mixture into a mixing bowl. Okay, so check the temperature to make sure it's not too hot. It must be warm, but it must not burn your finger. Because if it burns your finger, it's going to burn the yeast. So if it's warm, it's right. Now we're going to add 1 tablespoon of raw honey or date syrup. One teaspoon plus a 1/4 teaspoon Himalayan salt, half a teaspoon bicarbonate of soda and 2 teaspoons instant yeast. Mix that. And then we're going to add the flaxseed mixture. To mix mine with the mixer. Now, an important step here is to use the back of your spoon and to get the chia seed lumps out. Otherwise, you're going to have gel lumps in your bread. So I've mixed it in the mixer for about 1 minute. Then I used the back of my spoon to remove the lumps. And now I'm going to add the oat flour, gluten-free oat flour. Okay, so 1 cup gluten-free oat flour. If you can't get hold of gluten-free oat flour, you can always make your own. Place gluten-free rolled oats in a blender, dry without anything added, and grind it into a flour. Then place it through a sieve, like this one. And then you can use that in your gluten-free baking. One cup gluten-free oat flour, plus a 1/4 cup gluten-free oat flour, it is important in this step to not take too long when you're mixing your dough, because oat flour absorbs the moisture, and if it sits in the dough for too long, then you're going to end up with a dry dough and your bread will be dry and brittle. So I'm going to place this in the mixer because it helps to blend it quicker so that the dough doesn't dry out. You will see that the dough is very similar to wheat dough, kind of sticky, and when it looks like that, you know it's done. Scrape the dough together and then place a cloth over it and put it in a warm place for 30 minutes, no longer than 30 minutes. So this has been resting in the sun for 30 minutes and it has risen. And now we're going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Now I'm going to mix this in the mixer. You will notice in the beginning the dough will be in a ball, and once the dough has broken up, then you know that it's mixed. This is what it looks like when it's been mixed through. Now I'm going to place it in a greased loaf pan. I'm going to place some warm water in a bowl. If it's too hot, you can add cold water. Just feel the temperature. Wet your hand. And press the dough down to get rid of any air pockets. Then smooth the surface. And run your fingers along the side to create a loaf shape. Now I'm going to place this in a warm place until it has risen about so high. It depends on the size of your loaf pan. Mine is a little bit small, so it's quite high. It's quite close to the rim. So mine is going to rise a little bit higher than if you have a deeper loaf pan. So it depends on the temperature of the area where you're placing it to rest. It can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 1 hour to rise. For me, it normally takes about 40 minutes. I like to place a large plastic bowl over the top to keep insects out and to keep the moisture and the heat in. Once you've placed your dough in a warm place to rise, preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius. I like to preheat mine about 20 degrees warmer so that when I open the oven, it compensates for the heat that is lost so that my bread starts baking at 220 degrees Celsius. This has taken about 20 minutes to rise, and it is important when you handle the loaf pan that you don't bump it, because then the dough might fall flat. It took a little bit longer for the oven to warm up, so it started bulging out toward the side, and you should try and get the bread into the oven before it starts bulging like that. But it's still fine, it will still work. So I'm going to place it in the oven now, carefully without bumping it. I've turned the temperature down to 220 degrees Celsius, and I'm going to bake it on 220 degrees for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to bake it at 200 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes, and then on 180 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. The bread has been baking for 50 minutes and I'm ready to remove it from the oven. Once you have taken the bread out of the oven, cover it with 4 kitchen towels for 10 minutes. This will help to keep the moisture in as it cools down and will make it easier to be released from the pan. After 10 minutes, remove the bread from the pan. Place it on its side and wrap it in 4 kitchen towels. This will help to keep the moisture in and prevent the bread from drying out. Once the bread has cooled down completely, immediately place it in a Ziploc bag to keep the moisture in. This bread has cooled down completely, so let's have a look. So as you can see, the texture is not too moist, not too dry, not too brittle, and looks like wheat bread. I will be demonstrating how to use the same recipe to make burger buns, hot dog rolls, and pizza bases in another video. Thank you for watching. See you next time.